documentary type thing where you do like, you film like Danny, Tommy?
I would want to, ideally, I want to just like, I think your story, well, like your story in particular stands out because of like the whole fight or die thing. Like, I don't know anyone else who has done that personally.
Yeah, there's only about 800 of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only 800. I mean,
That's the exact figure. I think it might have just jumped over 1,000. Let's see.
to do the Talisker Whisky challenge or the actual like.
Yeah, I think it's sitting. Let's see.
All right.
Goodness. Yeah, I think it's just under 1,000, maybe just over 1,000, but right around 1,000 people have rode the Atlantic.
Yeah, but I imagine like there's only your team was like the first.
We're the first all-veteran team of 4 from America.
Yeah, to do that.
So there was a team 2 years prior to us that set the world record.
Yeah.
And it was called Latitude 38.
Yeah.
Because they were from like Nebraska, right?
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of water. And it was 2 Brits and 2 Americans that did it.
Yeah.
One of the Brits' names is Angus Collins, and this guy is like a rowing legend.
Yeah.
Really super nice guy.
Yeah.
But it was 2 Brits, 2 Americans. So we were technically the first all-American team of 4, period.
Of veterans.
We were technically the first all-American team of 4 because they had 2 Brits.
I see.
And the year that Angus rode with them, they had to evacuate one of the dudes. He was like super seasick. Couldn't keep fluids down, dude.
Yeah, I was just watching like the videos and I was already getting kind of sick just watching the videos. So I can't even imagine like doing that myself. But yeah, I would want to like interview you. I would want to at some point talk to like Tommy. I don't know how much we could talk about in terms of like the agency and stuff like that. Because I'm always curious about like hearing.
I'm sure he could tell you some things.
Some things.
I mean, he would obviously just look at you and just do that a couple times.
Got it.
Depending on what question you
Got
asked
it.
But
Yeah, so eventually I would ideally get to have the chance to like interview them, maybe Danny, maybe even Tin, right? Talk to him about his experience there. But
Tim would be open to that. I know Tin's FBI experience was pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'm kind of excited about that. But I mean, every time I talk to you, right, it's always like in passing during like the lunchtime or like at Chops, and I really wish that we had like the camera set up just to record that natural conversation and stuff like that. Because I don't know, I just like I want to make sure we could continue where we kind of left off and stuff like that. But I guess for me as a civilian, it's like I never left, the country. Like Vietnam was my first time actually ever going anywhere out of the country. So I'm kind of like curious to hear like what led you to like join the military and stuff like that. Like, how did you make that decision?
So for me anyway, I mean, just going to college, like everybody else does. And it was like September 11th happened when I was in university. It was my freshman year.
Yeah.
So I watched on TV when the Twin Towers went down, and I was in my dorm room at Western Kentucky University.
Yeah.
And so I think after that, that was kind of one of those things to where I felt like I needed to give something back.
Yeah.
Like there was more purpose and service than just pretending like it didn't happen. And so I ended up joining in 2004.
Yeah. And
so I guess when I chose my job, so you go into this station called MIPS. It's a military entrance processing something or other. It's one of those acronyms.
Yeah.
So you go in and they show you all these videos
Yeah.
of cool guys doing cool things.
Yeah.
And they try to, one of their recruiting tools, they try to sell you like immediately on going into what's called 18 X-ray program, which is like, it's infantry with special forces intent.
Yeah.
but they sell it to you like you're gonna be in special forces, and
Okay.
I didn't believe them, so I didn't do that.
Why didn't you believe them?
Because I'd always heard the recruiter tales, you know. Like,
I see.
Yeah, so I watched all these videos, and I watched like videos for being an MP. I watched videos for being a tanker and scout cavalry, which is like basically driving around in Humvees and looking for tanks.
Yeah.
So, and then I saw infantry, and then I was like, well, that looks cool. So I picked infantry.
Yeah. What was it about like infantry that like appealed to you?
It was a bunch of guys out in the woods. It did not look comfortable. They're wearing all this face paint, and
Yeah.
you know, I had basically all camouflaged up, running around the woods, chasing each other, and just seemed adventurous.
That's so weird because like a lot of people would steer away from like discomfort and stuff like that, but like you actively, that appealed to you.
Right. It's funny. Initially, I went into the Air Force office,
Yeah.
and it just didn't ring for me.
You know, there was a point in my life where I was kind of thinking about like joining the military because I just was kind of lost too, and I didn't really know what to do. And I was doing a lot of research, and like they kind of said, or like what was commonly like said was that like the Air Force is not as like active or like engaged in like getting your hands dirty, I guess, compared to like the other branches.
I mean, I guess all the branches have their own mission set.
Yeah.
There are definitely some bad dudes in the Air Force. I mean, you've got like Air Force PJs, which are pararescue.
Yeah.
Right. Those guys are bad. Air Force combat controllers.
Yeah.
Which they basically go in, they jump in ahead.
Yeah.
Take care of business, call in stuff, kind of tip of the spear type guys.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've obviously got your F-22 pilots and stuff like that too, right? And,
Yeah.
But logistics are just as important. But I mean, as far as getting their hands dirty, I mean, I guess they just have a different role, you know.
Yeah.
Air Force isn't meant to close with and destroy the enemy with direct fires, right?
Yeah, got it. So you basically enlisted, and then like what happened after that? Like,
Okay, so I left in August of 2004. 2004, August. I went to Fort Benning, Georgia. Was picked up at a place called 30th AG, or 30th Adjutant General, that basically receives all these soldiers off the street. You're in civilian clothes.
Yeah.
You have people from all different walks of life.
yeah.
And they take you in. They give you these uniforms.
Yeah.
They shave your head. They give you an Eagle cash card. You go basically you go stand on this glass plate. They tell you which running shoes you're able to wear based on your feet.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, you get this type of foot. You can buy this shoe, or this shoe.
Yeah. Dang.
And then you go get your shoes, and you do PT in the morning and all that. But you're basically in holding and figuring out how, like, basic movements, very basic things
Yeah.
before you get sent to training. And even then, like 2 or 3 days in, you have some people that just like, no, this is not for me.
And they could just drop out.
No.
Oh, I see.
No, but we had a guy that like tried to run away. Like, He tried to escape.
Yeah.
Like he was a prisoner or something.
Right.
And he ended up trying to drink, I think it might have been bleach. He drank something to try to get kicked out. He got kicked out, but it was like 3 days in. And we hadn't done anything yet.
Wow. So.
But,
okay.
So then they send you downrange. You get this duffel bag full of stuff, put you on a bus, and we were all going to the infantry. So
Yeah.
we went to a place called Sand Hill.
Yeah.
It's a part of Fort Benning. and we were under what's called Infantry Training Brigade.
Yeah.
And so it's like this special part of Fort Benning that is just meant to be hell.
Okay.
So we had our special little spot. We get off the bus, and then it just starts. Drill sergeants just go to work.
Just grilling you.
Oh, no. Hold your bag above your head.
Yeah.
Keep it there. Keep it there. Keep it there. And obviously you're going to start.
Yeah.
Well, that just got worse.
Okay.
Run to the tree line. Run back.
Actually, I'm curious. I think you said you were a drill sergeant at some point. No?
No. I was a staff sergeant.
Staff sergeant.
That's when I got out as a staff sergeant. I wasn't a drill sergeant. I had a bunch of friends that were drills.
Yeah.
But I want to say it probably used to be a lot more fun. I think nowadays, just the control measures that I guess are placed on drill sergeants are a little bit more stringent nowadays, especially when you're talking about infantry soldiers.
Yeah.
And I mean, as an infantry soldier, your job is to close with and destroy the enemy with direct fires. Your job is to shoot people.
Right.
Right. And so, in my opinion anyway, when you train a soldier to do that, then obviously you have to maintain control, right? You can't just go crazy, but I think you need to be able to take away some comfort in garrison and try your best to prepare them for the discomfort they're going to have downrange. I think it's better to keep a tighter leash on the soldier in garrison so that he's not double pressured downrange with A, being controlled constantly, but B, being stressed out by combat.
Yeah.
But they used to be able to do that. I mean, the drill sergeants, boy, when I was in, they didn't have rules.
Yeah. Got it.
Now, the drill sergeants have to do push-ups with their soldiers, which is different. I mean, it's a big Army call.
Yeah.
But, it's just, Army's changing.
Can you tell me a little bit, because I'm not too familiar with like the rankings and stuff like that. So like, what does it mean to be like a staff sergeant? Like, is that significant? Is that something that like kind of up there, or is it?
Well, so basically on the enlisted side anyway. So on the enlisted side, you have private through sergeant major, right? So E1 through E9. So you have private, PV2, PFC, and then you'll have, it's a funny rank. It's specialist or corporal, depending on what your duty position is and how your command likes to structure it. A corporal is basically like a sergeant in training.
Yeah.
And then you'll have sergeant, staff sergeant, sergeant first class, master sergeant, or first sergeant, depending on whether or not you're in charge of a company.
Yeah.
And then you'll have sergeant major, and you'll have either just a sergeant major, a command sergeant major being in charge of a battalion, brigade, or higher.
Yeah.
And that's the highest you go on the enlisted side. A staff sergeant is an E6. So on the enlisted side, kind of the standard is to, if you're talking about rank progression, E7 in 7 years in the infantry MOS is about, that's kind of the standard as far as your rank progression. If you're hitting all of your career pillars, you're doing a good job, you have good reports, but it's not really all about attaining rank. Of course, being promoted is nice, but that's 7 and 7 is kind of on the infantry side.
Okay.
Now, some MOSs, some job skills, military occupational specialties, which is your job.
Yeah.
Some of those, it takes a really long time to make rank. I mean, you might be retiring at an E6 in certain jobs.
Yeah.
It might take you 20 years to make E7 in certain jobs.
Dang. Okay, so I imagine there's a lot of like leadership positions or like that you've gone through or like cycled through. Like, so is that true or? Yeah.
Yeah, so I started off, my first job was a driver, and I did not have a driver's license. I did not have, well, I had a driver's license. I did not have a military driver's license.
What's the difference?
So when you get a military driver's license, you have to go through this driver's course for each vehicle that you're licensed for. And at the time, I was an M1121 Humvee driver, which is it's a tow missile carrier.
Dang.
And it's called a 1121. I had never driven before a Humvee, which is weird because you don't have a rear view mirror. You can't see out that mirror.
Yeah.
And you're driving at night under night vision with no lights on.
Yeah.
Across the drop zone where they just dropped paratroopers.
I see.
Yeah.
Why would they not have that?
They're short on guys. And that's pretty much the lowest responsibility you can have is drive.
I see.
Right? So, I was a driver. That was my first job. I wasn't very good at it the first night.
Just driving.
Just driving across the drop zone. I thought everything was a parachute.
I see.
I couldn't see up. I wasn't used to night vision, and we were using what was called PVS-7. So there's two. It was binocular, but there's two lenses, and then one lens in the front.
Wait, and this was actually when you're like deployed overseas, or
No. This was in training.
I see.
I got better.
Yeah.
So,
I hope so.
Yeah, but then after that, I progressed to being a gunner.
Yeah.
So I was a TOW-2 Bravo missile gunner. It's an anti-tank missile. I was a Mark 19 gunner, which is a 40 millimeter grenade machine gun. I was a 50 cal gunner, M2 50 cal gunner. I was a SAW gunner, which is an M249 5.56. I was a 240 gunner, which is a 7.62 belt-fed machine gun.
Yeah.
And then I was a rifleman. And this is all in an airborne heavy weapons company.
Okay.
So what that means is we would drop Humvees with us. So we'd jump with Humvees.
And this was all still during like just drilling, or like, I see.
Yeah.
So like for you, when did things like, because to me I'd be just like blown away by doing all those things already in training, but like when did things get like serious for you? Like, oh man, this is getting like intense.
So I got to the unit in January. Is that right? January of 2005. So after Fort Benning, I went to Javelin School, which is a shoulder-fired fire and forget missile.
Yeah.
So basically, you track your target.
Yeah.
You fire the missile. It goes up, and then you leave.
You leave.
And it finds its target.
That's crazy.
So I went to that school on the way to airborne school, and I went to airborne school, which is also at Fort Benning. We did 5 jumps. On our second jump, a young girl died. She was in the Wyoming National Guard. Her name was Megan Alderman. She was on my bird, and she had a bad exit, hit the side of the door, rolled down the plane, and burned in. And so that was on our second jump. They grounded all the aircraft, and the next day we jumped. We jumped the day after next. But they had everywhere from the post commander. It was General Frakely at the time.
Yeah.
They had them doing JMPI, or the inspection process. They had everybody down there just to make sure that there weren't any more catastrophic failures.
Yeah. So like, how did you feel like after that event and knowing that you'd have to like jump again? Like, did that change like your view on like life and like just taking things more seriously now, or like?
I mean, to be honest with you, it freaked me out, but at the same time, I don't quit things like.
I see.
So the next day, every day at airborne school, what they do is they'll tell you to do an about face, which is turn around.
Yeah.
And then they'll ask for anybody that wants to go to sick call, which is like, are you feeling sick? Do you want to go to the doctor?
Yeah.
If you go to sick call, you get kicked out of airborne school. And so that's like the nice way of saying, are you done? And everybody turns around. And so when these people fall out and go back into the barracks or whatever, and they give you another about face, not everybody necessarily sees who quits. So it's like, it's a way to bow out. And you're on all these rocks. And the day after that happened, it's like, first sergeant would just, about face, turn around, and all you hear is rocks just getting kicked around. A ton of people quit.
Okay.
At the time, I wasn't really a fan of jumping out of planes. My first jump, I hit the ground. I mean, I hit hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't break anything.
Yeah.
But I just remember, are they all going to be like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Second one was fine, and then she burned in.
What does that mean?
So they call it it's called a cigarette roll.
Got it.
And what happens is when somebody rolls down the plane, you have what's called an anti-inversion net on the bottom of the parachute, and it can get locked up, right? And it's net lock. But if a parachute spins and gets net lock, it's not going to fill up with air.
Got it.
And she was unconscious from hitting the side of the aircraft.
Got it.
So she couldn't pull her reserve.
Yeah.
But I don't know. So after airborne school, went to my unit, trained up for the rest of that year until I believe it was October. September. Is that right? Anyway, Hurricane Katrina happened that year, and we were on what's called DRF cycle. And so that was DRF was basically a global response force. So the 82nd used to have, they might still, they used to have a global response force to where you have anybody on what's called DRF 1, you're on it for 45 days, and they split that between nine different battalions, or 9 battalions at the time, plus support. DRF 1, you're rigged. All of your stuff is packed, ready to roll. Your parachutes are ready to roll. You've got all of your equipment rigged up at a holding area called ADAG. Your vehicles. I mean, you've got like 400-pound parachutes on your Humvees, all ready to go, palletized, and basically you have 2 hours. It's called 2-hour recall. And you get these telephonic check-ins the whole time. So you'll have code words, and some of them is, hey, here's the code word, and you just have to make sure you can telephonically check in with everybody, because if things hit the fan, then you better be standing there in uniform in 2 hours, ready to jump out of an airplane.
I see.
So there's no alcohol. You can't travel more than 50 miles outside post. And sometimes they'll call a certain one where you'll have to come in and do an exercise, but you don't know you're doing an exercise, right?
I see.
You think you're going. And so when you get these calls, you go in, they put a piece of tape on your cell phone, they take your cell phone, they put it in a box, and then everything goes to RF radio. There are no cell phones anymore.
So, yeah, as a civilian, or as like a normal person, they're like, oh, why are you taking my cell phone away? Like, what's the purpose of like doing that? It's just
loose lip sync ships, man.
Got
So if you call your girlfriend when you're, hey, we're getting ready to go to Iraq, something just happened. Well, next thing you know, CNN's playing that.
Got it.
But so we get one of these calls, and it was Hurricane Katrina. And so we sent half of our, I guess it's almost a brigade-size element, which is about 3,000 people.
Yeah.
Sent half of them down on an airplane, civilian aircraft. We called them ADVON, or Advanced Party. And the rest of us drove down, drove Humvees from Fort Bragg to New Orleans. And it took 3 days.
Yeah.
I mean, breaking down, it was something. So we spent 29 days down there in New Orleans, just wading through sewage and clearing houses and nursing homes, and man, that was really my first experience with, you know, what it's like to be in the Army. I mean,
Wow.
we saw a lot of nasty stuff down there, man. Saw a lot of deceased people that were, you know, found in just all sorts of different conditions. I mean, you know, we found people that, you know, were had been chewed on by dogs, and we found people that had been electrocuted, and you know, people that died in nursing homes. Excuse me.
Yeah, that to me like kind of blows my mind. How I'd imagine like your first like serious experience would have been like more like overseas or something like that. I wouldn't have expected it to be like within, you know, America and stuff.
Well, yeah, it was weird. It was like really the first time I'd seen somebody that was, you know, dead outside of a funeral home.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit different.
Yeah.
And you know, we also had a Coast Guard helicopter that crashed down there when we were down there.
Like
and
literally crash or just like
crashed and killed the crew. And so that's when it got real too. It's just like, man, you know, people die doing what we do. And you always know it, right?
Yeah.
You know you're gonna get shot at,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But you know, it's not. I mean, I wouldn't say a game, but it's not real until it happens. And I'll tell you, man, going down range as a private for the first time. I mean, I was 20, early 20s. We deployed in 2006, in I believe August of 2006 for the first time, my first time.
Yeah.
Went to Samarra, Iraq. And so we land in Kuwait after, God, that flight sucked. We went from Fort Bragg to Ireland, Ireland to Germany, Germany to Kuwait, Kuwait to Iraq.
Why do you have to make so many stops in between?
I mean, I guess it's because the plane can only carry that much gas. I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, you wait till we fly back on my last tour. We literally went around the world.
I see.
But so we land in Kuwait, and you're dropped off at Kuwait International Airport, which is like, I don't know, a 25-minute drive probably from another big base in Kuwait called Ali Al Salim. And so we land, and they don't have jetways. You know, you don't like get off the plane on a jetway to an air-conditioned room, and the TGI Fridays isn't across the way. Like you get on a tarmac, right?
Yeah.
So we land, and the pilot's like, "Hey, welcome to Kuwait International Airport. Local time is blah 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 blah. Local temperature is like 128 Fahrenheit."
Yeah.
Like, this pilot's funny, right?
Yeah.
Get off the plane, and boy, it's scorching hot. And we're like, "Oh man, this must be the exhaust in the jet."
Yeah.
The jet leaves, takes off, like taxis away. It's still that hot.
Yeah.
And that's when you realize, this is what my life's going to be like for the next year.
Yeah. And then like.
Then it sets in. This is how hot it's going to be for the next year of my life.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah.
That I have a year here to do this, and I haven't gone anywhere yet.
Yeah.
So then you go to Ali Al Salim, you sleep in a tent with your whole company. So you got like 100 guys in a tent. PT in the morning. It's just like being in garrison. Chow hall. And then all day, you pretty much just wait. You wait.
So it's not at all like movies and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, you go to the gym, and you watch movies on your little back in the day, we had these little this is back in the day, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking 2006, but it flips open,
Yeah.
and you put a CD in there.
CD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
DVD.
DVDs. I remember
You
DVDs.
put a DVD in there.
Yeah.
It was high tech, man. We would watch DVDs and just sweat and just wait. Mm-hmm. And what you're waiting on is a bird available to take you and your logistical package to your destination. So then from there, you go to Spiker, which is in Tikrit, and you wait again. And then from there, you fly down to where you're going, and you do that by helicopter. So we did that with Chinook.
Yeah.
So you have to wait again in Spiker, and then you get a bunch of Chinooks, and then you start flying people into where you're going, and they're rotating out.
Were you kind of getting like antsy throughout that whole time, or were you just like fine with waiting, or was there like a sense of anticipation of like when are we gonna, like when is something gonna happen, or like were you glad that nothing was really happening?
I gotta think about that. I think more than anything, it's my first time over. I think more than anything, I was more or less shocked that this is actually going down, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't even gotten into, like, Kuwait's relatively safe.
Yeah.
So we hadn't even gotten into, area of conflict yet.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, I guess just anticipation of, what to expect. Mm. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So, so we got to a little place called Brassfield Mora, which was named after two soldiers that had gotten killed that were there in 2005, I believe, and maybe 2004. But so they named the base after them. So we get there, and I am assigned to go to what's called the Alpha 9 pad, this is an old blown up granary. Mm-hmm. And so like on the far southeast end, there's like an old blown up silo, and there's all this like rotten grain.
Yeah.
And so during the rainy season, it stinks.
Yeah. Can you actually like describe what, aside from it being like extremely hot, like describe like the environment, like the people, the vibe, and like what it's like around there, and like I guess maybe the culture. Do you get to interact with the locals or anything like that?
Oh, we sure did.
Let me check the cameras real quick too.
What's up?
Let me just check the cameras real quick, see if they're still. Yeah, still good. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so really our first interaction with Iraqi people. So when you first start doing your, going outside the wire is what we call it. So leaving the base.
Yeah.
When we first start going outside the wire, you do what's called left seat and right seat rides.
Yeah.
So for about a week or so, you're just kind of hanging out with the unit you're replacing and watching them interact with the people that they've met and the relationships they've built in the communities and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Because you're fighting an insurgency.
Yeah.
And so, you deal a lot with like sheikhs, which are like community leaders and those sorts of things. Police commanders, army commanders. So they introduce you to everybody. But then you start doing, then you flip flop.
Yeah.
And then they start shadowing you just to make sure you're not screwing everything up. And so in 2006, we ripped out with a unit called the Rakkasans. And that was 3rd Battalion, 187 Infantry, 101st Airborne. Mm-hmm. And so 05, 06 for them in Samara was a rough one. There is a very kinetic fight.
And were you involved in that at all, or like?
We were coming in the tail end of it.
I see.
And so what the enemy does is they notice that, okay, they've got this certain patch on their shoulder, and these guys have this patch on their shoulder. They're different. They're new. They're fresh. They don't know what they're doing. We're gonna hit them.
Got it.
My throat's dry. So yeah, we rip out with them, start interacting with the locals a little bit, in that respect. But yeah, like our area of operations, my platoon anyway, was more or less a place called Mukashifa, which and Aldar, which is just north of Samara, and we had northern Samara. But so you've got the city proper, which is run by Charlie Company and 1st Platoon Delta, and they had like pretty much the city proper, which is a couple 100,000 people there, and we had north of Samara up through Mukashifa, which is a small town. But man, what's up?
No worries.
So we had north of there in Mukashifa, and that was an area where, so the Ba'ath Party had set up, and this was years prior during Saddam's reign, I guess, if you want to call it that. They had set up areas like north of Samara that were essentially like retirement communities for Ba'athist members and members of the military and all that. And then once he was ousted, it's like everything collapsed, and
Wow.
things just kind of went to hell.
Yeah.
But so up in Mukashifa, you had a couple of different characters up there that were, I don't know how you say it, entrepreneurial. So a lot of it had to do less with hate and more with like money and opportunity. If you go there, you really see how poor people can be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And necessity is a thing. So I don't know.
So does that kind of like cross your mind when you're there, like to kind of like have a sense of understanding for, I guess, like the enemy, or is it like, do you understand if it's like?
Well, so yeah, there's a thing too. It depends on the enemy, right? I mean, you'd have bombs in place on the road. I mean, they were usually the explosives that were placed at that time anyway were 155 rounds, which were gathered from old ammo supply points.
Yeah.
So they had these huge areas that were just these pits, just full of tank rounds, and full of artillery rounds, and they're all old, they're all rusty.
Yeah.
But they're also big chunks of metal with holes in, for you put explosive in.
Yeah.
So they were making, people were making explosive out of sodium nitrate, and they were stuffing these rounds with them, and then they would rig them up with a blasting cap, and then they would have a wire run off a certain distance. They just touch it on a battery, boom, blows up. And so, a lot of times what would happen is some guy would come in and say, hey, I want this here, dig a hole. Talks to guy A, then goes to guy B and says, hey, here's two rounds. I want you, and there's a hole at this location. I want you to put these in that hole. And he goes to guy C. He's like, hey, here's some wire, blah, blah, blah. Put this in there, run it out there. When Americans come by, get them. So at any point you find one of those people, they literally do not know any of the other ones. So it's not like you catch one person doing all of that.
Yeah.
It's just, it is what it is.
And I see.
Pretty crafty.
Pretty crafty, I guess. I guess to them it'd be like business and like not taking things personally if it's related to business. But I imagine, you know, on the receiving end you're gonna take it personally, right? Like, or is it just like you understand it's just a part of war and?
You know, I guess it just depends, man. There's a couple of them that were really personal. So, yeah, I mean, it just depends. For instance, so I had a good friend named Tracy Willis, and so he was in a scout platoon. He was on a sniper team, and he and a guy named Morley and another guy named Corvo were on top of a roof and in Samara, and they had east and west stairwells on the outside of the building, so that and they picked this position so that, you know, if they got compromised, they could, if somebody came up the stairs, they could go down the other stairs, right?
Yeah.
And so they got compromised, and you know, they estimated anywhere between 20 or 30 dudes pulled up and assaulted both stairwells. And so Tracy got shot in the face and got killed immediately, and then Morley was killed, and Corvo was alone on the top of the roof, and they were trying to take Tracy's body, and Corvo was just engaged in both stairwells and holding on to Tracy. And the only thing that, you know, that we had Kiowas that were just coming off station for some reason, just happened to see this, and ran them off. And yeah, Corvo ended up getting the Distinguished Service Cross after that, which is it's the second highest medal. It's basically next to the Medal of Honor as far as combat awards go, and he got the Distinguished Service Cross for that. But he's still, like, to this day, he's still, it still messes with him. That was really personal. I think we all had we got called at like 5:36 a.m. and our squad leader came out and called the whole platoon in, and we had to go out. He's like, I got some bad news. You know, one of our guys used to be in this company, and immediately, like, my buddy Bo that ended up rowing the ocean with me, and my other buddy Tim, we were like super good friends with this certain individual that is still in the Army. And immediately, and he'd been this dude had been in some close ones. We immediately thought about him. We're like, oh, dude, no.
Yeah.
And then they're like, Willis, and then we were like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
And it just, it hit us really hard. I think all of us at that point, you know, we wanted blood at that point, right? And this was in month 13.
Yeah.
This is like, we're supposed to be gone at this point.
Yeah.
We got extended to 15 months, that deployment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so, you know, I guess fortunately on that deployment, so we lost 25 guys in that deployment, including some Navy EOD techs, and we had 57 guys wounded out of a battalion size element, which is, you know, we're talking about, you know, probably less than around 400 people of 400 infantry people plus support. So I guess fortunately on that deployment though, we were always supported by our command. the best commander that I have ever seen and had I lucked out to have this guy as my battalion commander. His name's Viet Luong, and he's from Vietnam.
Yeah.
He is the first Vietnamese general.
Yeah.
Now.
Wow.
And he was my battalion commander, and he always supported us. So, with respect to our operations, our kinetic operations anyway, when we're going after guys or whatever, he always stood behind us. We never had to worry about, him second guessing our actions or taking care of us on the battlefield. He'd check on us.
Yeah.
Our health, our welfare, everything.
Yeah.
So that helped out a lot. It could have been worse with another command, I think.
I'll just check.
But we had guys. We had at the time. We had people coming from Sudan.
Yeah.
To fight.
Yeah.
Right. So we had Sudanese people coming just to look for a fight with Americans.
With Americans.
Yeah, they'd come to Iraq to fight people in our uniform from Africa.
I see. That's.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, you'd have to ask them, I guess.
I see.
Probably just because I don't know. It might be the same mentality as someone like ISIS.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So you said this was 13 months in out of how many tours or how many years did you spend in, I guess, overseas or in active duty? And then I kind of want to hear more about you explaining about the importance of people checking out on their peers welfare and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. So I made sergeant over there. So that was when I ended up being what's called a section leader as an E5, which is usually an E6 position. And you've got at that point you've got what were peers, and now you're their superior. Not superior, but you're their leader, right?
Yeah.
As far as rank goes.
Got it. Yeah.
But you have to be a leader, not a boss. I think that's really when you start to make that distinction between being a manager and being a leader. So the reason that you're there is because of your performance.
Yeah.
And they understand that.
Yeah.
If I'm going to take my team or my squad out on a run, if you beat me, you better be hauling. You better be running fast, right? You better be running sub 6 miles.
Yeah.
And that way I have somewhat of an excuse to losing to you.
Yeah.
But you have to carry yourself to a standard to where people respect you for your position, not the rank. Take the rank off.
Yeah.
You can be a leader without having the rank. But you also have the responsibility to take care of them. All right. I had some soldiers that kind of had some things going on that required a little intervention. I had one come to me, and he was telling me about, hey, Sergeant Newton's got to talk to you. I was like, yeah, come on in, what's on your mind? I was like, starts telling me about his wife, and he's like, my bank account's cleared out, and my wife has a friend living with her now in my on-post housing. Is your wife's friend a male? Yeah. Come with me, Brown. So when you have problems like that at home and you're downrange and you're helpless, being absolutely helpless, you can't do anything about it, right?
Yeah.
You're in Iraq. You're already dealing with some stuff.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And you got problems back home. One of my best friends, I actually talked to him last night. His mother passed right? His mother passed. And this is on his second deployment with the 82nd. And I was in Samara again with the 25th. But his mom passed, and he was in Solder City. And this is like immediately after another one of our good friends got killed down there in 2009. But battalion wouldn't let him come home. Like they made it hard for him to come home. He missed his mother's funeral. So that's bad leadership, right?
Yeah.
And you're downrange. But so you're dealing with this stuff back home. So I think you gotta really check on your soldiers every day, or check on your subordinates every day, and have FaceTime with them.
Yeah.
At least let them know you care.
Yeah.
And your door's open.
Yeah.
You know. So I think as far as taking care of their welfare, just checking up on them, asking them how their day goes, ask how their family is, know their kids' names, like, how's your kid doing,
Yeah.
Just let them be human, I guess.
Yeah.
At that point down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me just make sure I save what we have so far.
Okay.
Cool.
Trying to remember dates and stuff, man. It's been a long time.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like I don't think we have enough time to talk about like all the things that you've been through, but it seems like you've like gone through a lot of stuff, and I definitely want to like talk to you more about that at another time. But obviously, it seems like you guys sacrificed a lot, and talking about like taking care of your friends, basically their well-being. Like, I guess this would be a good time to transition to talking about like fight or die, and like what is the purpose of fight or die, or like what is it to begin with?
Okay. So all of us on our team had sustained a traumatic brain injury, right? Which means that we were all blown up and concussed.
Including yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, and this would take another story, but I was tasked off to the British Army for about 6 months in late 2006 to early 2007.
Yeah.
And that's when this happened.
Yeah.
That's when I was involved in a mortar attack. It was 26 82 millimeter rounds in 6 minutes, bracketed within 50 meters, which means that they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And my teammate and I mean, just got pounded. But a couple weeks after that, a good friend of mine who was with the Royal Army Medical Corps, his name's Rory McKenzie, he was involved in an IED attack known as an EFP, or an explosively formed projectile. And it's like a molten slug that comes out of a tube. And basically, it will eat through any armor that we have. There's nothing that can protect against it. At least at the time, even our tanks. And so he was in what was called a Warrior, it's a fighting vehicle, and it went through the soldier in front of him, tore him in half, and then took Rory's leg off right at the hip. And he was able to cough, and then they ended up tourniqueting, his stump, as it were.
What do you mean he was able to cough? Like,
They called him dead. They triaged him dead.
I
And he was able to cough. That's the only reason they knew, oh, he's alive.
got it.
So then they were able to get him. They thought he was dead. They triaged him. And so, anyway, he, years later, rode across the Atlantic in a Talisker with other disabled guys, other guys with no legs. One of them had no legs.
Yeah.
And they rode across the Atlantic Ocean, and they raised 1.4 million pound for what's called BLESMA and the Endeavor Fund, which is Prince Harry was, I don't know what the prince is up to these days, but he was heavily involved in the Endeavor Fund and BLESMA, which is British Legless Ex-Servicemen's Association.
Okay.
But it basically is there to support guys that don't have prosthetics, can't get prosthetics, need prosthetic help because their servicemen's compensation is we complain about the VA, but theirs is pretty bad. That they're in need of some reform in that area. But anyway, he rode the ocean, made a bunch of money, and then so in 2014-ish, the industry I was in, which is oil and gas, kind of started to take a dive. And so I started thinking about, all right, so what's a passion project that I really, feel strongly about? Mm-hmm. And it was helping vets. Mm-hmm. So I started putting together a team. I partnered up initially with a nonprofit called Veterans Expeditions out of Salida, Colorado. And I wasn't able to raise enough money to get it off the ground the first time. Mm-hmm. And that was in 2016. Mm-hmm. And so in, let's see, 2015. Anyway, it was 2015 to 16.
Yeah, because I remember you were talking in another interview that the hardest part of this, logistically, I guess, was actually like fundraising and getting more like media attention or just like marketing this because you said no one in America knows about this challenge, right?
No, absolutely. So in February of the next year, I had a good friend commit suicide. Mm. And he was an Army EOD tech. Mm-hmm. And he had been on our deployment with it, and he had brain injury and outcropping mental health issues. Mm-hmm. And so my friend Bo and I, and there's 11 of us total.
Yeah.
But we all drove down to Fort Hood, Texas, to be at his funeral. Mm-hmm. And his platoon leader that gave a talk basically turned it into a safety briefing. It made us, we were mad, right? He was supposed to say things. His family was right here, and he turns this thing into basically a "don't kill yourself" speech to the rest of the people in the company. Mm-hmm. And on the ride back, Bo and I were just steamed. Mm-hmm. And on the way back, we were like, "Dude, we got to do something, man. This is happening too much." Mm-hmm. And I can't count how many people that I know that have taken their own lives after war, mm-hmm. right? And the majority of those have brain injuries or mental health issues. Mm-hmm. And so we decided to do this row. He's like, "Well, are you still interested in rowing the ocean?" Mm-hmm. I was like, "Yeah, let's do it. I'm in." All right, so we got a team of 2.
Yeah.
He calls me one day and he says, "Hey, I got a third." His name's Chris Kuntz. He was 1st Special Forces Group, which is what group Tommy and Derek were in. 1st Special Forces Group and 3rd Ranger Battalion. All right, sounds like a stud. And so I called Chris. We had kind of our telephonic interview.
Yeah.
All right, dude, solid. Let's roll. Got 3. Then I met Bryant at an oil and gas party, and he was a Special Forces National Guard guy, major, and so he was in. So we ended up partnering with the University of Denver's STERM specialty in military psychology, mm-hmm. With a guy named Dr. Jacob Hyde.
Yep.
Who is now at I want to say University of Arizona. It's
I'll have to check that later.
It's either Arizona or Arizona State. There's going to be some Sun Devils that are mad about that comment. But so I believe he's Arizona. But anyway, so we partnered with them, and that really, being partnered with a university,
Yeah.
you know, with that kind of credibility and a PsyD, really helped us, I guess, you know, validate ourselves, right?
What do you mean by that? Like, why was that like important? I guess.
If I'm going to go to you and I'm going to ask you for $20,000 or $60,000 or $100,000
Got
so
it.
that I can row a boat across the ocean
Yeah.
to help veterans, A, you're going to be, you're going to say, what?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
People don't do that.
Right.
Has that ever been done before?
Right.
I can explain that to you. Yeah, it's been done before. And then you're going to ask, well, how are you helping veterans? Right? If I say I'm going to help veterans with your money, okay. How are you going to do that?
Right.
What is your avenue?
Got it.
Where's my money being channeled?
I see. So that's where the university.
Right.
I see. That makes sense.
And so we learned we learned about their program. We took part in their program. So we all had psych evals and counseling sessions, and we gathered data for them on ourselves. We kept journals.
Yeah.
So we were kind of like a control group because it was a pretty brand new program.
Yeah.
And so we took part in the program, and and so that really helped solidify us as being legitimate.
Do you know if the program is still continuing, or is it like was it a one-time thing, or?
No, it is. It is. Yeah. Matter of fact, I went to Spain in 2019 directly before COVID. In December of 2019, to see the next team off.
Yeah.
So we put a second team across.
Yes.
And I met with two guys there that were in the program. One of which his name's Ethan Banner, and he graduated from the program. He's in the Air Force now.
Yeah.
And so, they're military psychologists.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, no, it is still continuing, and they still do outreach, and they still give help to veterans, counseling services, family services, those sorts of things. But they gather data as well.
Got it.
So while the veterans are receiving the service, the university is also gathering data to better understand what mental health is and how does TBI and mental health issues affect veterans. And then we also partnered with what's called the Marcus Institute for Brain Health, which is more of the physical aspect of how the brain works and how TBI affects you. What does the brain look like after an injury? So they do more like the mapping, and then they work with the University of Denver then to figure out how the two correlate.
Got it. So to kind of like summarize all that's been said so far, you wanted to do something to kind of like support like your friends, veterans who have gone through the war, conflict. You thought one of the best ways, or one of your passion projects, was rowing, and so you wanted to partake in the Talisker Whisky challenge, in which you row across the Atlantic Ocean from the Canary Islands to Antigua.
Correct.
And that's about 3,000 nautical miles, right?
Correct.
And I think it was estimated to take, on perfect conditions, 33 days and about 1 to 1.6 million strokes per person to get across. But I think on one interview, I'm not too sure on which race or which challenge it was completed in 54 days, 9 hours, and 3 minutes.
This is correct.
Okay.
That's why I'm kind of laughing at your average. And in perfect conditions, right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
but so the world record was at 34 days for the longest time until this last year, and a team of 2 made it in like, I think it was like 22 days or something like that, something crazy.
Team of 2.
A team of 2.
That's crazy. That's ridiculous.
But so, and this is not an excuse, all right? But during our year, everyone was slow.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone was slow. We had the doldrums. You know what doldrums are?
Not really.
So it's basically like a vacuum in the middle of the ocean. There's no wind. There's no current.
Yeah.
It is glass.
Yeah.
And at some point, you can't tell the difference between the ocean and the sky. And you'll feel like you're kind of like floating.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, you are floating, but it feels like you're floating in midair. Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. But it's also really hot with you have no wind.
I see.
So you have no breeze.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there just cooking.
Yeah.
You're not going anywhere. No ocean spray, nothing to cool off with.
I see.
For 8 days. We were still for 8 days. We were para-anchored for 2 during a really bad storm. Para-anchored, which is like you take a parachute and you tie it off to the bow and then you flake it into the water. And so what that does is the current that's trying to turn you sideways is pulling that parachute. So it turns the nose of your boat into the current, right? So you're still sticking with the current. So you're not perpendicular to it. You're not gonna roll.
Right.
So you're anchored in with a parachute. Because obviously you don't have enough chain out there to anchor to the ocean floor.
Right. I see.
Yeah. So you use a parachute anchor.
That's so.
But yeah, we lost like 10 days in storms and doldrums. So I mean, really, we did it in like 44 days, right? Yeah. No, 54 days, 9 hours.
So, so I have a bunch of questions about that. So like, how did you prepare for that physically, mentally, and like, did you have sailing experience prior? Like, did you guys know how to like survive out in the ocean?
So, we used to say 4 Army guys in a boat wouldn't go wrong. That's what we would tell people.
Yeah.
And no, we had, none of us had sailing experience. And the reason that I decided to do a rowing challenge instead of something else was just because excuse me, man, I'm gonna go grab some more water.
Yeah, we can take a water break.
Yeah, I might have to. I'll finish this one up real quick. So rowing, Rory did it. Rory, after he did this, also gave the opening speech for the 2012 Paralympic Games in London. Rory is now a motivational speaker. Rory also has one leg, but he does, and a wife and 2 kids. He just had his second child recently. But I actually talked to him last night.
That's crazy.
Yeah, still friends, man. Still friends. But he was able to raise a huge amount of money, and he was able to make an impact. I mean, on a community that direly needs help.
Yes.
And if you think about it, you take every day that you're out there is another opportunity for media coverage. All right, it's another opportunity for people to donate to your GoFundMe page.
I see.
It's another opportunity for you to sell merchandise, right? And so you can run a 5K.
Yeah.
All right, you can do the Susan G. Komen 5K, which is a huge thing now. But I mean, getting a permit, getting people involved, how much do you charge? How much do you actually make off that? Who are you partnered with?
Got it.
So, and that's one day.
Yeah.
So you've got a 6-hour fundraiser. I mean, You can swing and hit it out of the park, or you can miss.
Yeah.
Or you could put together this adventure that is something that's going to be really cool.
Yeah.
But B, you have the opportunity to make a lot of money. But I think more importantly, you get your story out there, and you get the veteran story out there. You get the media attention. You get to talk about things. And I'll tell you, whenever we landed, we get this phone call, and we're all just on cloud nine.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you the runner's high that was.
Yeah.
All right, but so Lori, Bryant's wife, gets this phone call, and it's it's this lady on the line. She's like, "Hey, is there anybody on the team around that that can talk?" And I'm right there. She's like, "Yeah, I got the skipper right here." I'm like, "Yeah, give me the phone." So
Yeah.
I start talking to this lady, and she says, she's like, "Hey, my husband's here, and he's pretty emotional, but he's got something he wants to tell you." And so it's like, "Hey, what's up? This is Alex," and he is just crying.
Yeah.
And he's able to choke out, "I want to live." And evidently this dude was like severely hurt in combat.
Yeah.
And he was like suicidal.
Yeah.
And he just said, "I want to live."
Yeah.
And then he started like exercising and posting it on Facebook and repping us. And man, that's how you know it's working.
Yeah.
So that was a super emotional phone call we got.
Yeah.
But that one, so we saved one life
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah.
54 days is worth that,
I see.
right?
Yeah.
So that's more or less all of those things is why we did this and why I think we can consider this a success. And then the fact that we're doing it again every year.
Yeah.
Without the front-loaded cost
Yeah.
of building a boat.
Because it's already built now, right?
Yeah,
I see.
I mean that boat. I mean just to build that boat and outfit it with everything. I mean we're talking over $200,000.
Yeah. Wow. Got it.
So that's just to enter this race. The race entry fee is around $20,000. Just to enter the race, just to show up and get a T-shirt.
Okay, I want to ask more about that. Yeah. Okay, you want to take a little water?
Yeah. I got to, man.
Got it.
My throat is. I don't know what's up. I don't know if it's the weather or what.
I need to check on everything. See, still good.
You gonna turn this thing off here?
Yeah. Make sure everything's good.
Yeah, sorry, man.
Got our water hydrated.
Oh yeah.
Clear our throats.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on, man. I don't know if it's the weather or what.
Yeah. It was kind of crazy last night. It was like just complete downpour
Yeah.
on the way back. Oh, man, it was crazy.
Yeah.
So that makes me kind of think about how do you deal with the row physically, mentally, and then I'm also wondering, so were you guys prepared for the 54 days? Was there like an issue with like supplies and rationing, or was it like you're well stocked for beyond those? Because that's almost 2 months. I can't imagine almost 2 months at sea with nothing to do.
Yeah. So, you always have something to do. First of all, but no, prepping for it. The biggest thing, our biggest, I guess, challenge.
Yeah.
You'll hear it from every rower that's done this that isn't privately funded. Like they don't just have a checkbook.
Yeah.
You'll hear it from all the rowers, but you limp to the start line. All right. Fundraising was probably the toughest thing. I mean, we had galas
Yeah.
right? We had auctions. We had an NHL player that did an ice fishing deal for us. We had a fly fishing tournament down in Alabama. We had and we had a lot of fundraisers. Sorry,
No worries.
turn that off. We had oil and gas parties. Like we'd bring people in from different oil and gas companies and throw like dinner parties.
Yeah.
And a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there. And at the end of the day, we raised over 300,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a far cry from 1.4 million pound, but we also didn't have Prince Harry.
Yeah.
So we built our boat, and that was kind of a logistical nightmare, just because the time it took. We had to raise a certain amount of money, so we put a down payment on this boat, and they would start the build.
Yeah.
But it's a carbon fiber boat, and carbon fiber has a shelf life.
Really?
Yeah. So once you buy this carbon fiber, you have to use it in a certain time frame. You can't just keep it in the warehouse.
I see.
So our boat builder, it's like, okay, like I will start this build for X amount of dollars, but I'm not ordering any more carbon fiber until you pay me.
I see.
Because I'm not getting stuck with this $50,000 bill.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're building this boat, but we're also running into a timeline. Like we're making this money, but we're spending it as quickly as we're making it.
Yeah.
But we have to have this boat ready by June
Yeah.
of this year, period, so we can do all of our training, we can outfit it, and we can get it shipped. Because if that boat needs to be shipped by like 1st of October.
And then what do you mean by ship? Like how do you ship an entire...
How do you ship a ship?
Yeah, how do you ship a ship?
So we get this boat. I drove by myself from Denver, Colorado to Port Townsend, Washington, which is essentially Canada.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's north of Seattle. And so I drive up to get this boat when it's finished. So I drive the boat then all the way back across the country to Denver.
Yeah.
And I had a timeline because we had this event at the University of Denver to where we showcased the boat like on the campus.
Yeah.
The hockey team came out, the cheerleaders came out. We had a press conference,
Yeah.
let all of DU see the boat and all of its majesty, and it actually looked really good. We had a pretty cool boat.
Yeah.
And there's at the time there were only 6 of this certain type of boat in the world.
Yeah.
Built by Spindrift Rowing. And so, drive down, set up shop, and then immediately after that, I get back on the road with this boat because we don't have anywhere to store it. We don't have, it's Denver. We don't have a slip.
Right.
There's no ocean there.
Yeah.
And it just sitting on a trailer isn't good for it.
Yeah.
You need to get it in the water and get it moving around. But so I drive it then from Denver to Mobile with a team. And we get down to Mobile. We stayed down in Mobile for, I want to say like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Started receiving all of our stuff, getting our training done. So we had to have a certain amount of hours on the water in open ocean.
Yeah.
We had to have daytime and nighttime hours, had to be logged. We had to have Royal Yachtmaster Association coastal navigation training. We had to have Marine RF radio. It was radio training. We had to have certifications for Marine RF. We had to have our medical training.
Yeah.
Over there, it's just like in Britain they do a first responder type, like CPR training.
Yeah.
We had a company called D-Day Response Group come up,
Yeah.
and it's a bunch of old Special Forces medics.
Yeah.
And a guy named Don Deo, real good guy. So he brings another guy up, and so we were doing everything from like suturing to IV to like hemorrhage control to AED to CPR, and we got all this cool guy stuff they put together for us. We had bandaging and like hemorrhage control bandage, like special kind of bandages.
Yeah.
Epi. We had 2 different types of epi. We had like 3 different types of motion sickness stuff. We had injectable antibiotics. We had, you name it.
Were you like relieved to have all this training, or did you think it was kind of like over the top, or were you like?
Who knows, man? What these guys mainly do is they do medical training for yacht masters in Florida.
Yeah.
So this stuff happens on boats.
I see. Yeah.
So, and if it happens on a boat and you're ill prepared to take care of it, and you don't know when you're gonna get picked up.
You're right. Okay, that's fair.
So, then the closest cargo ship that could pick you up might be 3 days out. You don't know.
Right.
So, it's best to be prepared. And we did a lot of this stuff on the boat. So if you think about being on a boat, it's 5 feet wide.
Yeah.
Okay. The whole thing weighs 400 pounds.
Carbon fiber.
Yeah. Super light.
Damn.
So it moves.
I see.
All right. So do CPR on that.
Right. It's gonna be tough.
Okay. Yeah. So we had to figure out, because they didn't know like how this was gonna work either. We're doing like CPR training and stuff like that. And they're like, have you guys done this on a boat yet? We're like, no. So we get out there, we start doing like medical training on the boat.
Yeah.
Boy, we had to figure out different configurations. Like we had take the seats off the rollers and put them in the mid deck.
Yeah.
And like basically make a backboard for the guy.
Yeah.
And straddle on both gunnels and be able to push down.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we're tipping over and everybody's going in the water, including the guy that's dying. So yeah, they were like, have you guys done this on a boat? No. Yeah, we should probably do that.
So like, going into this challenge, did you know all like that you had to prepare all of these things, or was it like taking it one step at a time? Just like, like another fire to take care of?
Oh no, I knew exactly what I was getting into because I'd failed at it before. The first time around, I had an equipment list, as long as my arm. I had model numbers, I had pricing, I had quotes from different companies.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what we needed. I knew exactly how much it cost. I knew exactly where to get it.
Yeah.
It was just a matter of getting it installed. A lot of this stuff, when you build the boat, a lot of this stuff you have to like decide what equipment you want on the boat before they build it. It's not like buying a a speedboat or something like that, to where you can modify it afterwards. We're talking about carbon fiber.
Yeah.
So whenever you mess with carbon fiber, like on a craft that small, you compromise the integrity of it.
Yeah.
So it's got to be built for it. So if you're going to have a certain model, Garmin GPS touchscreen display, well, you need to know the dimensions for it so you can cut the hole first and you can mold the carbon fiber.
Right.
So.
Wait, quick question. Did you turn on the mic?
Did I not?
Did you? I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Oh, it's on. Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Because I remember you turned it off earlier.
I think we're good.
Yeah. All right. Good.
All right. Yeah. So we knew how much all this was going to cost. Now, getting everything together in order to be able to make the timeline was difficult.
Yeah.
Because a lot of our funding didn't come in till later in the game. Food even. We're talking about almost $20,000 in food. And
so were you like training and like preparing all this stuff on top of like, I don't know, like what else were you doing during this time? Did you have other responsibilities, or were you just like solely focused on like preparing for the race?
yeah, just race stuff, man.
I see.
Yeah, we were in the gym, and I hate Instagram.
Why?
Because I don't like. All right, so the guy in the gym that's sitting there doing this, so I don't want to be that guy.
Dude, that's me sometimes.
Well, that's okay though. I mean, you do you, right? But it's just not my jam, right?
Yeah.
So, but we had a PR person, and so we had to. People take pictures of their food too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's not really my jam either. Okay.
Me, dude.
So yeah. So I had to get an Instagram account, and so we had to go to the gym, and then we had to upload 3 photos a day, and they had to be staggered from each other. So we had like an upload photo schedule.
Right. Yeah.
And she had like peak times, and we were all in different locations. So Bo and Chris were in Wyoming. Bryant was in Colorado. I was in Indiana at the time, and Colorado, back and forth. And so, we're all uploading these videos. So we're at the gym, taking photos of ourselves, taking pictures of our food, taking pictures of us and our families. Whatever. Just doing the marketing thing, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't mind if people take pictures of me. I just don't like taking pictures of me, right?
I get you. Yeah.
But so, it was all about that, and training, getting things paid for, getting things shipped to the right place, and then that boat had to be out of Mobile and to South Carolina and containerized by October 1st in order to make it to La Gomera in time for us to start the race.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we have, it was up until the day we had to leave to get it there, until the food got shipped to Mobile. And we had a pallet of freeze-dried food show up, like the day we were supposed to leave.
Oh, man.
That was our food.
Yeah.
Like $20,000.
Yeah.
And there was a hurricane coming in.
Yeah.
We had to get out of there.
Yeah.
So Chris and I, bagged all this food up, put it in the boat, put a bunch of life jackets and stuff over it, because you can't ship food into another country without it's like egg, beef, chicken, anything containing those.
Really?
You can't ship those without paying for it, right?
Yeah.
Well, we're technically not going into the country. It's under a carnet, which means it's going to sit in port.
Uh-huh.
So it's not technically entering the country. It's going to sit in port, and then it's going to leave again.
Yeah.
So we had to pack all this food up, and it was a whirlwind of a year getting all that together. But literally limped to the starting line, just like everyone said.
And that's not even talking about the actual rowing across the ocean.
That was the easy part.
The rowing part across the ocean was the easy part.
That was the easy part, yeah.
Really? So what was the daily routine or cycle like? And was there ever a point where you were just like, this sucks?
Well, yeah, it sucks. That was the fun part of it. So being in La Gomera, getting ready for it. So we got to La Gomera 14 days before we were supposed to ship out.
Yeah.
Bo and I literally left from Raleigh, North Carolina, from our friend's wedding. So our buddy got married. We left the next day.
Yeah.
All right.
Damn.
And so, we show up, and so we start receiving our stuff. The boat enters the yard, but you can't. The yard, the shipping yard, is locked off until a certain day. Mm-hmm. Until everybody's stuff's there, so nobody has really an advantage.
Yeah.
There's a certain day where you can go enter the yard.
Yeah.
And you only have a certain amount of days to prep. So now you're rewiring, because you've got to unwire everything to ship it. Mm-hmm. right? So now you're like wiring batteries up. Well, you can't ship it with the water maker in. So now you're like basically rebuilding the water maker, which is that was Bo's job. Bo's the water maker guy.
What is a water maker?
So it's a triple osmosis desalinator.
I see.
So it takes seawater in, gives you fresh water, spits the brine out.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it would make water.
Yeah, a water maker. Got it.
So some people call it the water. Yeah, it's water maker. All right. So so that was Bo's deal. But being in La Gomera and like the little things that you forget, or the little things that can make life easier that you remember when you get there. You're like, oh man, we didn't bring this.
Yeah.
Cargo net. Really helpful.
Why?
Because you can basically bolt it on with like JB Weld, and you can just put things up underneath like this area for storage, so it doesn't roll around everywhere. So like big tubs of peanut butter and those sorts of things.
Yeah, got it.
So you're not like taking up space in the cabin.
Yeah.
'Cause you don't really, you don't want a whole bunch of stuff in the cabin. They're tiny.
Yeah.
You can hardly fit in there.
Yeah.
So I mean, you saw the door.
Yeah.
Right? It's this big.
Yeah.
Right? So to get your body in and out of that several times a day is a lot of fun. But so like cargo netting and tape and epoxy.
Epoxy.
Yeah, like quick drying marine epoxy.
In case of
A number of things. You might break seals. You might have a crack in the boat. God forbid. Like we had extra seals for these twist off gunnel compartments, and they're sealed, and that's where we kept our food and stuff and our trash.
Yeah.
But you twist them off, and there's your food in there. Well, if the seal breaks, and then we had deck hatches too that are sealed.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Aha.
Hopefully. Got it.
So if the seal breaks, you end up with a ton of water in there.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of water. And so we figured out one day that we're going a little bit slower than we should be.
Yeah.
And so underneath the bow deck hatch was where we kept like stuff that we weren't really really using too much, and we tried to keep the water line even.
Because you have to keep it balanced as well, right?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. But it didn't look like that so Chris got off to go scrub barnacles off the boat. Right? So he puts a snorkel on and clips in and dives off the boat, scraping barnacles. Boat's like this.
Yeah.
I think we got a problem. And so we look in this deck hatch, and it is full of water. Like the seal broke. Yeah. And so we spent hours with a hand pump
Just
pumping all the water out of this compartment. And there's we had a ton of rope and chain in there. So like this rope is soaked now.
Right.
Which is great.
Super heavy.
Yeah. So then we had to rearrange the whole boat to get the weight distribution right, and it's a nightmare. That's because of seal.
Oh man, such a small thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Just little things, man. Little things, but leave La Gomera, and that was super emotional too, because it's all coming up to this moment, and like the whole island comes down for this, and there's like this walkway. It's like on top of the break, the shore break, and you hear your team name called. They start letting people out.
Yeah.
And you get in the boat and start making your way out of the harbor. And then they've got this channel that you run out, and at the very end of it, there's two buoys.
Yeah.
All right. So you've obviously got your channel markers, right? But then there's these two Talisker buoys. And once you cross that, that's when your time starts. We crossed that, and we rode for about 45 minutes or so, and Bo turns around and looks at me. said something expletive, and he didn't talk to me for like a couple hours. It's like, I can't believe we're doing this type thing. Like, oh yeah. Once you start, you're going.
Yeah.
Once you start, you are going. There is no turning around. Or you're getting picked up, which is that's not something that we're prepared to do.
So that kind of leads me to ask, like, was there ever any doubt in your mind about like completing it? Or was there like ever, or like a scenario where you're like kind of worried about like making it across?
There were, man, I remember the first night I saw a 50-foot wave.
Really?
Really. Yeah, really.
Okay.
So Bryant and I were on the oars, and this is literally the first night we ever wore our life jackets. And we're tethered in to what's called a jack line. Mm-hmm. So you get out there and you clip into this line that runs down the side of the boat. Mm-hmm. And we took climbing harnesses and just cut the legs off.
Yeah.
So it was just a belt.
Yeah.
Because I mean, wearing a harness out there put a climbing harness on and row in that machine 3 hours a day, 12 hours.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're staying perpendicular to the waves. Is what you want to do. If you go this way, if you're parallel,
right,
you get tumbled.
Got it.
So you run up these waves, and we're looking backwards. So we're watching this happen, and we ride up this wave. And we're completely vertical.
Yeah.
I mean, completely vertical. I'm looking at the sky.
Yeah.
And then you just see this wave curl over you slowly.
Yeah.
And then you're inside the water.
Yeah.
And then you skip down the wave like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And then it happens again. And then it happens again.
Yeah. And
this storm, I mean, we couldn't change out for 4 hours because we couldn't open the cabin doors. Mm-hmm. If a wave like that happened and the cabin door was open and that cabin got filled with water, we'd have a super big problem.
Yeah.
And so Brian and I were just up there, and they were locked down. They were locked down watertight.
I see. So two of you guys were on top, and then the other two were just like chilling. Mm-hmm. Not chilling, but I wonder what that was like in there.
Oh, they're probably probably being in a dryer filled with rocks.
Yeah.
Like, probably wasn't fun. I mean, we were all over the place.
Yeah.
I've been in the cabin on some pretty scary nights. Yeah, it's pretty wild. You get thrown around a little bit.
Yeah. I imagine you guys don't get seasick, right? Because
we didn't. We prepared. So Bo had to take what's called Bonine because Dramamine would make him pass out. Mm. We took Dramamine for a couple of days to start off. Didn't touch it the whole way. We were fine. And Bo instead of taking Dramamine took Bonine. Yeah. Which is a different anti-nausea type thing, and because if he took Dramamine, he'd just fall asleep. Dang. But we took it for like 3 days maybe. Yeah. And we're fine, no problems. Didn't get seasick once. We ran into another American team out there. As an American team of 5. They had one guy on there who had very severe ALS. Mm. Like he couldn't walk, and he was rowing an ocean. Mm-hmm. He's in a motorized wheelchair, usually. Yeah. Right. And he's got this special chair up there, and he's got these little oars, and he's doing his best to paddle. But they rowed the ocean with him. Like 4 of his friends put him on a boat and rowed the ocean with him. Yeah. And to raise money for ALS research. That's wild. But we ran into these guys, and they had the same boat builder we did. Yeah. And they're in this bright yellow boat. Yeah. We run into them in the middle of the ocean.
That's so weird to run into someone.
Well, the thing is, you can see forever, and then all of a sudden, they're just underneath a wave somewhere, and you're like, and bright yellow. It's like, is that the ALS team? Yeah. So we like row their way, And sure enough, man, they're just chilling. And they are green.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just sick as dogs. All of them. All of them, yeah. They ended up beating us by a couple days too.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
How that happened.
I don't know. We took different routes.
How
We went further south.
how could there be different routes? I thought it would just be like a straight path to this other place.
No. So you get a weather brief beforehand. And the team that won was called the Dutch Atlantic 4. All of these guys were 6'6" or taller.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were just straight Vikings.
Got it.
But there's this huge storm coming in from the northwest.
Yeah.
So we're getting briefed by a company called Vestas, which is like the weather people. And there's this huge storm coming in from the northwest that's about to hit the Canary Chain.
Yeah.
And the weather experts were like, whatever you do not try to go to Antigua with a straight shot. You will get sucked in by this thing. What do you think those Dutch guys did?
They went.
They went that way. They went straight. And they missed the storm. And so there's another team called the Naughty Boys.
Yeah.
And they were really cool guys. Before we met these guys, we didn't know what was going on because like you talk about the Naughty Boys, like I mean, what kind of name is that, right?
Yeah.
And but it was a play on words, like nautical boys,
Yeah.
Naughty Boys. But so they started to take. The majority of us went south.
Yeah.
Right. And they saw the Dutch guys miss the storm, and they broke west immediately. The current is not supposed to be straight across. The current sweeps down and around. There's a really slow moving current along the middle, and they call it the Great Circle. So the North Atlantic, which, I mean, technically we were in the North Atlantic, but the farthest North Atlantic currents go around like that.
Yeah.
And then the southern northern Atlantic, the south part of the North Atlantic does this.
Yeah.
That's likely why the Caribbean islands were all settled before the North Americans, right?
Right.
Because that's what they're going to hit first.
Yeah.
You can't come back this way.
Right.
You've got to go around.
Right.
So we went south, and the Naughty Boys came in second. So we should have broke west early. But yeah, then we all got spun out, like the whole pack of us. I mean, we were all in a pack. There were like 9 boats, and we were like a school of fish on the tracker.
I see.
And then the storms hit. We're just scattered, and there's a up-to-date, like minute-to-minute tracker called Yellow Brick that tracks your boat, and everybody at home watches it. And like people were placing bets and stuff on this.
Oh man.
But yeah, it's just a bunch of boats spinning.
Yeah.
Is what it looked like on the tracker. And we get this sat phone call from Brian's wife. It's like, you guys are going the wrong way. Like, we know, like, can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so everybody kind of got broke up then, and then we had to find the current again. And the doldrums came right after that storm, so that was like right around Christmas time frame, and that sucked.
Why? I mean.
No wind, it was super hot, no current. So we were just out there cooking and bored out of our minds.
So you said there's always something to do, but like during that time, you said it was like 8 days?
Yeah, we weren't. Well, there's always something to do when you're rowing.
I see.
Because you're rowing for 3 hours. Well, if you're not rowing for 3 hours, you're either sleeping, eating, reading a book, or doing priorities of work, or cleaning something. Doing laundry. We did laundry out there. We took showers. But during the day, it's too hot to sleep. So you read a book or something.
Yeah.
Can't sleep during the day.
Really?
It's too hot.
I see. Okay. So
Yeah.
that was basically like your daily cycle for
Yes.
almost 2 months.
Yeah. So, Bryant and I would row for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then we'd switch out with Bo and Chris. Bo and Chris would come on, and then they would row for 3 hours. Rinse, wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
But it was kind of weird. Like, we stayed on what was called UTC time. So basically, it's like GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, but it's the same time in the ocean regardless. So you don't have time zones.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening, especially when you're going so slow,
Yeah.
I mean, relatively,
Yeah.
we're talking like 5-6 knots generally.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is you'll end up waking up for your shift at midnight and the sun's coming up. And then, so like day becomes night, night becomes day. And then you end up in Antigua. And then for the next month, you are just screwed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really interesting. Seeing the stars shift at night. So Orion on my night shift, even if it was during the day, by our construct of time.
Yeah.
But so Orion would always be right here,
Yeah.
right? And as we got further and further south, Orion would be shifting a little bit. And then, you can see, I mean, I've never seen so many stars at night, man. It's literally the most remote place on Earth.
Crazy. Dang. Okay, and then I guess, so you just rinse, repeat, did that for 54 days, and then how do you feel when you're finished? Like once you saw like the end of the challenge?
Wobbly. Yeah, so imagine not walking on solid ground for 2 months.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden having solid ground. You can't walk. Your calves are atrophied. We were barefoot when we got off, and so you're walking across concrete, or I guess the deck was it concrete? Yeah, it was concrete. So right on the pier, you're dragging your toes. You're not lifting your feet up properly.
Yeah.
So you're like scratching the top of your toes and stumbling, falling down in some cases. And getting your land legs back is interesting. But my mom showed up down there, so got to see her. She was super excited. They had a whole bunch of people that we didn't know. I mean, tourists that didn't know us from anybody.
Yeah.
Showed up to congratulate us and take videos, take pictures with us. Felt like a little celebrity. Yeah, people with like $100 million mega yachts, like honking their horns.
Dang.
It was super exciting.
Yeah.
And then getting back home, and people in my hometown, had heard about it, and my friends were all we'd go out or whatever. They're like, "This is that guy that did that thing." Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I guess the most rewarding thing though is just like getting the phone calls, like the gentleman that gave us a holler about him wanting to live and that kind of thing. As knowing the message was getting out there made it all worth it. But, yeah.
So, I mean, would you consider it like a success? Like, what else would you ideally, like, what's next for this? Like, I know you're not continuing with it personally, like rowing, but I think you're like part of the consulting, or maybe you might continue.
Yeah. No, I'm a member of the board. Obviously, being this far removed from everything, then it's kind of difficult for me to be too involved with day-to-day operations or anything like that. But right now, it's really difficult because unless you have like months to take off and having an American passport, flying into Spain from the United States might be a little bit difficult. Then leaving Spain, having a U.S. passport to go to any other country right now might be a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
And then getting back into the U.S., you're going to have to quarantine.
Right.
So it's it's just really not feasible for us to compete right now during the COVID thing.
Right. But ideally, what would be next? Like,
Well, so we talked about this with a guy named Angus Collins, and this is in 2019 when we put our other team across. But we would really like to do a Trans-Pacific race, and we'd like to leave San Diego and go to Hawaii. And because they're both military towns, right? You can go to Oahu, and you'd go into Waikiki Yacht Club. So there's a certain time of year you have to do that. There are different preparations you have to make. But for us, being able to do that, I mean, we're talking about interstate travel now. We're not talking about international travel. So if we were able to get that off the ground, Angus is interested. He works for a company called Rannoch Adventure that has started putting together boats in the United States for ocean rowing.
yeah.
So there's some opportunity there. But being able to do that domestically, if we could get that going, I think would be pretty cool. And then obviously going to keep doing the Talisker. And then there's another race. It's from Port Townsend to Alaska. It's a day. It's like a day trip, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the corners of them, right?
Yeah.
You just kind of go around.
Yeah.
But that's something that we've thought about doing. Yeah, I mean the thing is still moving along, still functioning. We still have our boat and our equipment, so there's really no overhead at this point. Yeah, just continue to help veterans.
Yeah. And I guess to conclude, hypothetically, if you could get your message across to like millions of other people, like what would that one primary message be?
I think it would probably be that regardless of what hardships you, excuse me, regardless of what hardships you find yourself faced with, everybody has their ocean. And so being able to have the confidence in yourself to cross that ocean is really, I think, the important takeaway from what we did. Regardless if you're military and have PTSD, TBI, or other issues, I think we all have our ocean. I think that's really kind of metaphorically what we tried to say by crossing the ocean.
Cool. I guess what you did was pretty crazy. I can't believe I worked with you. I've worked with you for almost like 2 years, and like it just blows my mind that like no one else really knows or like is having this conversation with you. Or, like, so I think this was really cool, and I appreciate you taking the time talking to me.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. I mean, there'll be a book at some point. So yeah, but anytime.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah,
Alex.
appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Cool, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries, bro.
Yeah, I imagine there's